The latest edition of the Morning Drive, here on the Majors TV. I do want to just touch on, like I said, this is the second show. I want to touch on the NHL trade deadline that happened yesterday. Just quickly touch on the winners and losers from yesterday's big day. Kind of a, always an interesting day. Whenever you get one of those trade deadlines in any of the four major sports, you got to go and see how, championships were obviously affected, and there were some different things to transpire out of yesterday. First, I want to start off with the winners, and I think the big winner yesterday was certainly Steve Yzerman and the Tampa Bay Lightning, namely because they were able to unload the $5 million cap hit that was Valtteri Filppula, and essentially get Philadelphia to take on that entire deal. Now, this is great from from many standpoints, or actually a couple standpoints. First, it relieves them of, like I said, that $5 million cap hit heading into the summer when they've got more free agents to sign. Obviously, that Steven Stamkos deal from last offseason kind of put them back a little bit when it comes to their cap situation. So unloading that $5 million cap hit of Filppula's was certainly a much needed thing that they had to do, and bravo to Steve Yzerman for being able to do that. Secondly, what's great about that move in and of itself was being able to open up a spot to protect somebody else on the roster when the expansion draft comes up this summer as well. Valtteri Filppula does have a no movement clause, so being able to open that spot up and look to protect another one of their higher commodities on that roster, I think that Yzerman put himself in some good shape. Same could be said for Ben Bishop as well. Being able to unload him, send him to the Kings, and getting Peter Buda in return, as well as a couple of other pieces. I thought that was a very nice move, another needed move that Steve Yzerman needed to do. So I think Steve Yzerman and the Tampa Bay Lightning definitely were the big winners coming out of yesterday's trade deadline. Another winner, Kevin Shattenkirk for the defenseman now of the Washington Capitals. I like what he was able to do, or the team he was able to go to in the Washington Capitals. Namely speaking, because he gets a chance to go and compete for a Stanley Cup. He also gets to kind of take some of the pressure off of himself that that was on him when he was in St. Louis, kind of having to be the man when he was there. And I think he could kind of go to Washington, fit into the system they have there, and not have such a heavy burden on his shoulders, like I think there was in St. Louis. Another winner from yesterday, too, I thought was the Detroit Red Wings. When I talked about, to start the show, some different things coming out of yesterday's trade deadline, was certainly the Red Wings being in a much different position than they have been in past seasons, and that's being sellers. I think it's pretty set in stone now that the Red Wings playoff streak is going to come to an end. And they needed to take a different approach to this deadline, and I think Ken Holland did a very good job at doing that, unloading guys like Thomas Jurko, and getting what they got in return for him from the Chicago Blackhawks, which the big piece of that, I believe, was a third-round pick, is phenomenal. Same thing with Steve Ott, too. Getting a sixth rounder from the Montreal Canadiens for a guy like Steve Ott was I think great when you're basically just looking for anything for a guy like him and where he is and where he's at in his career, and just the type of player he is. Getting what they did for Brendan Smith from the New York Rangers, I thought was another plus for them. I wouldn't have minded though if they signed Brendan Smith to a new contract, considering I think, relatively speaking, he was one of their better young defensemen on their roster. I think maybe the team gave up on him a little bit too quick. I would have liked to see them get a little bit more for Thomas Vanek. Obviously, that wasn't in the cards, though, and I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I look at that deal, getting a conditional third-round pick and a player in return for him, considering what they've gotten in other aspects. I don't know. It just seems like they could have gotten more from him. I like it. I'm just not sure why. I've been looking at a couple of different theories, stretching from his age, him being on an expiring deal, and how he was as a player before coming to Detroit last offseason. However, when I look at that, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because especially how he was before, how he wasn't. He just wasn't a very productive player in the couple of years prior to coming to Detroit, because he's still going to be playing for that new deal. He is on an expiring contract, so I didn't really know what to make of that one. It is kind of weird. I don't know if it was the age thing or the expiring deal thing, but again, I think in any other trade deadline where you didn't have guys like a Thomas Jerko or a Brendan Smith netting the return that they did, I think a third rounder and a player would have been fine for a guy like Thomas Vanek. But relatively speaking, I thought that this was a little bit of a different NHL trade deadline. So some of the losers, I thought Philadelphia with getting Valtteri Filppula in return and having to deal with that no movement clause. Now they're going to have to maybe expose another player that they may not have wanted to expose in the expansion draft. I don't like that, especially because Filppula wasn't as productive as he was in years past this season. So I'm not really too thrilled about that for the Philadelphia Flyers. I thought some teams out there that should have made moves that didn't are certainly losers. For instance, the New York Islanders, the Buffalo Sabres, other teams who are kind of right on the cusp of fight for a final playoff spot in their respective conferences were very, very quiet. I like the return that the Arizona Coyotes got for Havila, but it seems like this Verbata thing. Nothing was made of that, which was kind of weird. And how long has Shane Doan been on the trade market for, and nothing's been done with him? It seems like Shane Doan should have been moved, like 3 or 4 years ago with the Arizona Coyotes. Some other ones too. I thought Dallas could have made a move, especially for a goaltender. When you look at some of the other goaltenders who possibly could have been on the market, like a Marc-Andre Fleury or a Ryan Miller. I don't know. I think the Dallas Stars could have done themselves a little bit more of a service, trying to obtain a goaltender at the deadline as well. So other than that, kind of a wait and see with the Los Angeles Kings. I know that they got Jarome Iginla, which is fine. I'm just a little sketchy about the whole Ben Bishop thing. I understand why they got him, but I don't know if it was at the expense of having to trade away Peter Buda in return. So anyways, those are my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think. Like I said, the show's on Twitter, and then we're gonna go ahead and post it on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TheMajorsTV. And again, you can catch more of the same here on @TheMajorsTV here on Twitter. So until next time, I am Adam Hernandez, and this has been The Morning Drive. We'll see you next time.